What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and break down why tomorrow is going to be a massive day for the markets, a massive day for Tesla, because Jerome Powell himself is going to be speaking, the chairman of the Fed, and this is going to be very important for the future policies that they make and also the markets going forward. So I'm going to break down why that's going to be so huge, what other factors will affect the overall market in Tesla, and everything you need to know for tomorrow if you are a Tesla investor. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, deposit any amount of money into the account. You're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is any could be a free Tesla share, a free Apple share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just one day. So check it out before they run out. Tomorrow is the last day to sign up. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So looking at Tesla, guys, this thing's down about 1.77% at the time I'm recording this. I'm actually recording this during power hours, so the market hasn't closed just yet. But as of right now, it is doing almost exactly what I predicted from yesterday. So the reason why I did anticipate downside for today is the fact that we do actually have lots of bearish catalysts involving like China, the protests, not to mention production is being hurt by many companies like Apple, and that did actually cause Apple to take a big hit today. That ended up dragging down SPY, and the overall market did take a big hit because of that. Now, from Tesla's end, seeing the fact that the fact that Tesla had this like very bearish looking setup with the whole head and shoulders like formation right here, it wasn't really perfect, but you guys can see it right here. The whole thing is curling just like this, and we are re-entering this potential demand zone right over here. So I'm basically anticipating that Tesla's going to try to hold this 177 zone. We could break below it, but I'm going to be very careful for the time being. However, it's going to be very hard to predict what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after because we have Jerome Powell himself talking. This is going to be very huge. But as of right now, at the time of recording this, I did predict yesterday that Tesla would break below 180 and maybe see a test of 177. We actually did touch 178 today. That was our low so far, and we could even come lower. If you look at the overall trend, it's not looking the best, at least for the bulls. So I want everyone to be very, very cautious and ready for what's about to happen. So when it comes to Elon Musk, I haven't really spoken about him for a while. I really do appreciate everything he has done for the world and for Tesla, of course. However, it is important to note that I haven't really seen him actually tweet about Tesla in a very long time. I haven't seen him say really much whatsoever, at least very recently, and he has been a lot more fixated on Twitter. So I just wanted to make that very clear. That's the main reason why I haven't really mentioned him too often. Almost all his tweets are just about Twitter and other factors like that, but it's okay, guys, because at the end of the day, Tesla is still doing well. It's still a very, very strong company. I'm still very bullish long term, regardless of that. So what happened to the market was we are seeing production slips now basically perpetuating because of the fact that we are seeing lots of unrest in China, not to mention demand is slowing down in our economy right now. And the rate hikes that are essentially still going up, the effects of them do not happen immediately. It takes time for the market to slow down. It takes time for demand to slow down. And it takes time for inflation to slow down too. So, in addition to that, we also have Jerome Powell himself speaking. This is going to be very important because all eyes are going to be on him tomorrow. When he speaks, the whole market is going to move it very, very hard, in my opinion. But what really matters is what he says and how the market ends up interpreting everything. So, when is the guy speaking? He's going to be speaking tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone be ready for that on Wednesday, tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, okay? You have to be ready for this because when he starts talking, what tends to happen is the market tends to drop really hard in the very beginning. This doesn't always happen, but this is what tends to happen. Then what he actually says does affect the market in real time. So if he says something like very bullish for like a second or something very hawkish, the market could just, push up like 1-2% in a second, then start coming down and just make these crazy, crazy swings as the guy's speaking. But the real question is, what is the outlook going to be after that? And that is what I don't truly know right now. We don't know if the guy's going to cause the market to actually crash starting tomorrow or if the market's going to get a pump. It's going to be very dependent on what he says. So what he is going to be talking about is in my opinion, inflation. He's also going to be talking about some big pieces of data coming out, what the Fed is essentially doing, when they may be pivoting, which I don't really see happening for the near term. It's going to take a while for them to truly pivot, but they could be getting ready to slow down on the rate hike rate as time goes on. So instead of giving us more and more of these 75 basis point hikes, we are likely going to be seeing 50 basis points very, very soon and more consistently. It's also going to depend heavily on inflation. What I find very interesting about the meeting is Powell is going to be speaking on Wednesday, but on Thursday, we have PCE coming out. And if you don't know what this is basically like CPI from the Fed's end. This is going to be very important for the market just to show us a consistent decline in inflation. That's what we want to see. This could be a very, very good sign if things do go as planned. This is also coincidentally about 2 weeks before CPI comes out on December 13th. It's very close to about 2 weeks after. So that's also going to be very important. But anyways, when it comes to Powell, what does this guy end up saying? I don't truly know exactly what he's going to say. And what else is very weird about the markets is it has to do with interpretation of his words. So that's the reason why I do believe that there's both a bullish and bearish thesis that could be made about tomorrow. I don't really know which one is going to happen for sure. However, in my opinion, there's maybe like a 60% chance we end up more bearish after Powell speaks, because if you look at the recent Fed speakers that came out over the last 2 weeks, the large majority of them tend to be more hawkish, and the Fed really does want to cause as much pain as possible for the short term so that the overall landing is not as hard as it would have actually been beforehand. There's also a 40% chance, in my opinion, we end up being more bullish. So it's almost 50-50, but like I said before, I'm leaning a little bit more in terms of the bearish side because of the fact that things are not looking the best overall from the Fed's end. And the Fed, in turn, is likely going to continue to raise rates, and he may actually say some aggressive things. Now, please note that Jerome Powell could say the same thing with different words. Okay, and these words could be subjected to different interpretations, and this does affect the market in essence. So if Powell ends up saying things such as the Fed is ready to be aggressive, inflation is still high, this and that, the market could end up crashing because of that. Okay. But if he says something like, oh, inflation is high, but it's starting to show signs of maybe cooling off, but we need more data. And he says something like, oh, the Fed is likely going to be slowing down on the rate hikes. Things are looking optimistic. Jobs are still, doing well. I mean, something like that, right? And if he does say good things about the jobs market, that's not going to be the best of things for the stock market, because remember, good news is bad news and bad news is good news. We want pain in the jobs market to slow down demand and inflation. But anyways, like I said before, the main point is we could really go either way depending on what he says. And I can't really give you guys a perfect prediction because of that. I want to break down what could end up happening to the charts because of this. So on SPY, we have both a bearish and a bullish thesis that could be made. If you look at the overall trend on the daily candle sets, you will notice that right here, we have this descending broadening wedge, and we have key resistance all the way up to where this upper trend line is. And we are actually entering a very key supply zone if we do get a big push from here. So it is possible that if Powell were to pump the markets, we could slowly but surely start to approach this zone, especially if PCE shows another decline. Because so far, in June, it was like 7%. And since then, we've been slowly seeing it just come down and down and down. So we're hoping that for November, it comes down again. That could be a good sign for the markets, and you could make a thesis based off that. So this thesis suggests that we could slowly start pumping again, slowly push up and go for the gap fill on SPY. The key zone to watch would be 400. Break above that, then we have this gap that could get filled close to like 402-ish. Break above that, break 403, and this thing is going to fly to about 407 in my opinion, get hit by very strong resistance and kind of slow down from here. But like I said, that would be a more bullish thesis immediately after Powell speaks, right? It's going to happen over the next couple of trading days if Powell pumps the markets. But if Powell causes the markets to crash, here's what you have to watch for. On SPY, this thing is likely going to start coming down to the key demand zone around this 390 area. I don't know for sure if this is going to hold this time around, depending on the severity of his words, the extremity of them. If this thing breaks below 390, all right, I'm going to be watching 385. This thing could actually drop pretty hard to 385, and we got to hold it. If we fail to hold 385, we're likely going to go for the gap fill all the way down to the low 380s. So SPY could take a big hit real fast depending on what Powell ends up saying over the next couple of trading days, but it's also possible to also go up. As for Apple, I mean, it's a little bit less likely Apple gets a big pump too. I don't know if Apple's going to be as bullish because of the news that's coming out. Apple's barely holding on for dear life onto like a 140. If this thing breaks below it, it's not going to be a good sign, guys. This thing could come down pretty hard, which could drag down the markets. So I'd be very careful on Apple, but it is still possible to get a nice bounce off 140 depending on what Powell says. And we do have a gap all the way up here around 147, so be very careful on this thing. It's basically very similar to that of SPY. Right, it could go up or down depending on what happens. For 147 is going to be a key zone if this thing does manage to break to the upside and retest 145 and break it. If this thing does come tumbling down, breaks below 140, watch for that 138. And if that doesn't hold, 134 is where the demand zone was. Be very careful right over there. All right. And then on top of that, we have NEO is actually pumping temporarily because of a new partnership. We have the QQQ, which is not doing as well. It's just okay. It's very close to its demand zone, which is between 279 and 280. So watch that very carefully as well. If this does break below 279, I'm going to be watching about 274 to 275 around that zone. We got to hold that level, break below that, and this thing's going to come crashing down all the way down to 268 to 270 flat. This thing does have a lot of downside room, but there's no guarantee that ends up happening depending on what Powell says, right? And this will affect Tesla, believe it or not. Tesla tends to be correlated by the QQQ. It tends to dictate this thing as well. So finally getting into Tesla, all right? I know a lot of people were actually wondering about this. And let me actually say two last things before I talk about Tesla. Just real quick, the dollar index is pretty flat. It's very indecisive right now. If it bounces off here, if it comes right back down to this key demand zone, this could actually be bullish for the markets. But if it bounces, that's not going to be good. The market could start coming down. And finally, the VIX. I'm going to say this before I get into Tesla. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, on the VIX, real quick. This thing is starting to bounce, okay? And if this thing breaks past 22.64, it could continue to push up. However, we also have this big gap down here. So it's making me think there's a possibility this VIX comes down and the market pumps, and then it gets a big bounce off 19 to 20 in the future, and the market ends up dropping later. So there is a chance, maybe starting tomorrow or maybe the day after, depending on PCE, the market ends up pumping when people least expect it, right? The VIX is indicating that it's possible. I just can't guarantee it just yet. We'll have to wait and see. Depends on Powell. And that in turn will affect Tesla. So for Tesla, what am I essentially seeing? The first thing I wanted to note is the fact that as of right now, Giga Shanghai is still not being affected by these lockdowns. At least I don't see any reports about that at the time I'm recording this. And on top of that, Tesla's currently at a very key demand zone, or getting very close to it. We actually broke below 180 support. The next zone to watch is that 177 zone. We need to hold it. If it doesn't hold, we're going to be entering a danger zone. We got to hold 175 below that. And if that doesn't hold, guys, I mean, Tesla has this big gap down here. We could see 170 pretty fast if 175 doesn't hold. But until then, we need to hold 177. For tomorrow, there's one thing I need to note. We don't know what the news is going to say. All right. Sometimes a big headline could come out, which I can't really predict, and that could cause things you don't really like in the market, just like how Apple came down pretty hard. Tesla does look like it's in a distribution right now, so that does give the edge to the bears for the time being. But where it moves is also going to depend on what's going on with Jerome Powell and the overall market. If Powell causes the market to pump, okay, if the market makes a big move, we get a big bounce unexpectedly, Tesla has the potential to push all the way back up slowly over the next couple of days to 185, followed by 188. And we could even break this if SPY is in this like big rally phase. We could even break above it and start pushing up even higher. So you could even argue that even though Tesla does look like it's in a bit of a distribution right here, we still have a thesis for the bulls, seeing that this does resemble an inverse head and shoulders, a giant one. You could argue that it already played out since Tesla pushed up, but you could also argue that we may see a continuation, just like right here, the whole setup is getting ready to curl, just like this. I can't really guarantee that. I'm still very cautious on this stock. So if you are bullish for tomorrow, Tesla needs to break and hold 185. Break and hold that, and it does have potential to hit about 190 a share or even higher. However, I don't see that as like the big guarantee though. Right now, like I said, it looks distributive, which means that it is very possible for Tesla to also come down. If this thing doesn't hold 177, watch 175. If that doesn't hold, in my opinion, this thing is going to come tumbling down to about 170 or even lower than that and take a big hit. So be very careful on Tesla right now. And that's basically all I could really say. I can't really go into more details about what's likely to happen because of Jerome Powell himself and what he says. I don't truly know. So watch this very carefully. And like I mentioned before, I did mention that downside seems a little bit more likely looking at how Apple is looking and SPY and also the previous Fed speakers, but sometimes unexpected things could happen, just like during Jackson Hole when Powell caused the market to dump when people least expected it. It could end up happening again, or it may not happen that way. So we'll just have to wait and see. That's basically what I have for this video. Don't forget that Powell is speaking tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Watch your key levels on Tesla and SPY and whatever it is you want to trade. Non-financial advice, by the way. And do what you have to do. Do what's best for your portfolios. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.